Hola, hola, boa tarde. I would like to extend an invitation to anyone who is interested in joining me on reading and experiencing The Artist's Way. If you're not familiar, The Artist's Way is a book written by Julia Cameron some decades ago. It's a classic for creative people, artists, writers, musicians, famous people, but also people who are not in those creative pursuits, just regular people. I first came upon it in 2018 when I was in San Diego living and attending some of my first men's councils or men's circles, which are great gatherings of men, and of course they have women's, just set up by friends or whatever, where we come and we be in community and communion and just share for a few minutes whatever's going on in our lives with no feedback, just sharing and being heard, active listening, gracious, accepting, loving listening. And when I first attended men's circles, I was coming from this very logic-oriented, very much about do, I want to accomplish, figure out, solve. And I was like, what is the point of me sharing for a few minutes and not getting any feedback? I want feedback. I want to know what I can improve or what people's suggestions are. And what the heck, when they're telling things, I've got all these ideas, I want to tell them. And then after just a couple men's circles, I was like, oh, okay. I don't have this experience anywhere in life right now where I can just speak and be heard and be accepted and not be in some way criticized or not in some way have small defense mechanisms up of like, oh, well, I got to couch what I say in certain terms so that they won't think less of me or that they won't try and give me this advice that I don't really want or whatever. So I was like, wow, this is dope. But anyway, while I was there, first one and then another guy was speaking about how impactful Artist's Way was and how they were going to restart it and do it again. I said, oh, that's interesting. And I didn't look much into it. Then I took a road trip up through Big Sur, which is one of my favorite places in the U.S. and probably one of my favorite places in the world. It's a wonderful place. And I stopped in a monastery that I didn't even know existed. I just went up into the hills, and in their bookstore was The Artist's Way. And I said, okay. It was my early days. I wasn't that familiar with synchronicities and wasn't that familiar with trusting myself and whatnot. But I said, okay, this click, 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 just like that. I'm going to get this because it sounds interesting. So that was 2018. And what The Artist's Way is, like I said, it's a book that's broken up into 12 chapters. And each chapter is intended to be done in 1 week. So they're short chapters. They're not very long. I don't know, 10 or 15 pages maybe. And each chapter has a theme, and it's the focus of the whole book is reconnecting with myself, that true self, that innocent little loving, happy, exploratory, creative, fun Samuel that's in there, that at some point over the years, from experiences with family, friends, society, media, whatever, as well as with myself, began hiding and began constricting and began not sharing my truth or not exploring the things that I find really to be interesting. Instead, we've got all of these stories of, oh, well, that's not serious, or that's not real, or you can't do that to earn a living, or you can't, you got to work hard to play hard, or all these sorts of things. And it's, like I said, it's not necessarily about being some professional artist or musician. It's not about that at all. But it's about reconnecting with this part of me that for so many years has been pushed down and beaten down and been told that it is not important, or it's only important, or it's only acceptable when we've done all of the hard work, or on the weekends, or on those few days a year that we say we can take a vacation or something like that. So it's about reconnecting with this self. And part of that is just for healing, because that is us. That's a part of us, and it's a part of us that's been, for many of us, treated pretty roughly and pretty hardly. And so part of it is just for healing, just like a wound. You know, we have psychological wounds, and so when we can heal these things, then we just become more whole, we become more at peace, we become less stressed, we become much more confident. That's one thing that has come to me over these years. As I have deepened my relationship with myself, I have gained a lot of confidence. My definition of confidence has changed from something that I need to get, I need to get confidence, I gotta build more confidence, to something that is naturally existing because I know myself more, I trust myself more, and so when things occur in life that feels like this is what I want to do, or this is where my core is telling me, then I feel comfortable doing it, because now I actually believe myself versus trying to rationalize it and judge it against what society is going to accept or whatnot. So that's my belief of where real confidence comes from. And when we see these people that we are so impressed with or whatever, whether it's Elon Musk or, Monet, these people who went to their own drum, I believe that that's largely where confidence comes from. And in actuality, the beginning of an early portion of this journey that I've been on was with the artist's way. 2018 was when I really began going deeper into all of this sort of stuff, and I wasn't doing it from this way that I'm speaking now of, oh yeah, I want to deepen my connection with myself and that's how I'll get confidence. No, I was doing it from this, I'm a life hacker and I'm a businessman and I'm an entrepreneur, and this is how I do things, let me solve and let me figure it out. But as I was solving and figuring out, I was learning from people who have been successful before me, and I was finding these commonalities, and part of those commonalities was this practice of being gracious and loving and accepting of themselves and putting themselves first. And so, gratefully, the artist's way came to me without expectation and without really understanding what it was. And so in 2018, I went through 6 weeks of it. So that's 6 chapters. And in each chapter, like I said, there's a theme that builds upon itself of reconnecting with ourselves. But not in this, you don't need to worry if that feels woo-woo or whatever. Like, it's in a nice, fun way. There's some reading that's in it, but then there's also these just fun questions of reconnecting. What was your favorite cereal growing up? What did you like to dress up as in Halloween? Or all of these different sorts of things that on the outside seem like, oh, what does this have to do? But as the weeks go by, start learning things about yourself, about what really is important for me, what really do I care about, before I got all of these fears of I've got to make money or else I'm going to starve and be a failure, or before the family or society or whatever put it on of, oh, well, it's more important for me to be a lawyer because that's respected versus doing this thing I want to do, which is, having fun and being with friends and growing my own food or helping people or helping stray animals or whatever, So doing these things over the course of these weeks really get connection with it. And combined with that, a very important part of the artist's way is every morning writing what she calls morning pages. And this is where we bring in journaling practice, which is a game changer of a tool. I mean, there's many different tools, meditation, breath work, diet, sleep, journaling, all of these different sorts of things. Journaling is definitely one of them. And in the past, I used to really want to be a journaler for years. I mean, since I was a kid, I was like, oh, I really want to have a journaling practice. But I had this image in my mind of like, I've got to document everything from the day, and then I'll be able to reread it, put all this pressure on myself. And so I never continued it. And her way of doing it is just free flow. It's just writing in the morning and just getting it on paper. Just like if we were just speaking, whatever thoughts come up, just writing that down. And again, initially, from the logical perspective, this is like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. But as we get practice with it, we recognize that when we do that, we're disconnecting the logical mind, which is a beautiful thing, and it's got great value, and it's brought us to where we are generally. But it's also a very small portion of the power that is capable in our brains and in our minds. Different studies show different things, and really I don't think it's something that we can actually even understand the percentages, but the current Western understanding is that our logical, our conscious mind, the mind that we're using all the time when you're thinking about what I'm saying right now, that uses approximately 5% of our brain power, and the other 95% is used by the subconscious or the unconscious. And another word for that is the intuition or the knowing or whatever. And these are the part of our brain that is taking in all of these billions of pieces of information all the time, every moment of every day, including while we're sleeping, is taking it all in and it's storing it there in a way that most of us aren't yet able to access, but comes out as a knowing when we feel things, or when we just know what we want to do or we don't want to do, or things like that. And for most of us, it's not a practice skill, and we don't trust it, and it seems too woo-woo, and we use these words like intuition that have these negative connotations that I was never open to. But as I began going down this path, I began learning things like the quote from Albert Einstein, where he says, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The logical mind is a loyal servant. We've created a society that worships the servant and has forgotten the gift." And Albert Einstein was not a logical thinker. He came up with his theory of relativity by sitting, and visualizing what he called thought experiments, where he visualized these preposterous, to the logical mind, scenarios, and he imagined things that weren't logical whatsoever, and then those connected, scintillated, brought together, and he was able to come up with all of this wisdom. And it's the same with many inventors and creators and just problem solving in general. How many times have you gotten the answer that you're really struggling on by just sitting down and banging it out and writing lists of pros and cons on a piece of paper, versus when you let it go and you go for a walk, you take a shower, or you go for sleep and you have a dream or something, and some pieces connect and you're like, oh, that's what it was. That's the subconscious, that's the unconscious, and that's this part that we can build a relationship and gain experience and capability with by connecting with it, by doing these little practices. And so part of that with the Artist Way is doing this journaling every morning of just whatever's coming up, and then being done with it and letting it go, not even rereading it. So anyways, I did that in 2018, then again in 2019. The woman that I was dating, she and we did it again at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, and I did 9 months or 9 weeks then. So all of that. I've never actually completed all 12 weeks, and I don't feel bad about that whatsoever. You know, there's a time for everything, and it was clearly the time for me to stop at those periods, because there's so much information, even if it doesn't seem like it, and it's for me to put it into practice and to actually integrate and get that. We're a society in this world, and especially in the West, we're a society with more information than ever before in recorded history combined that we know of. And how many people do you know that are actually wise and actually successful and actually living the life that they want? It's not because we have a lack of information. And so this thinking that we have of accomplishment and consumption also applies. Of course, it applies so much to our credit cards and to malls and Amazon, but it also applies to the way that we think about knowledge. And so we're like, let me listen to podcasts on 2x speed, and let me read all of these books and speed read, and let me just do the cliff notes, and let me just ingest all this information. Meanwhile, I'm not actually integrating it and putting it into practice, and it's not actually really benefiting or impacting my life. So I don't feel negative about not completing it at all, but now I've got several more years where these practices and this way of thinking from the Artist Way has really brought in great positive impacts for me with my relationship with myself, who I am. And so now I'm interested to go into it again and I'm really curious to see what will occur. It's my intention to do all 12 weeks, but we shall see where the future is. But either way, I would really appreciate doing it with other people. So what I think that means, something we can co-create, but what I think it means is just having a WhatsApp group where we check in once a week, or we can, throughout the week, we can share little things that come up to us that are insightful or impactful, whatever we want to share. And then once a week, we're just keeping a little positive, supportive accountability of, I'm on this week, I'm finishing it up, and that sort of thing. I'm feeling really challenged, or I'm feeling really inspired, or whatnot like that. And we just support each other during this time of our own personal evolution and growth. So I offer that to anyone. And if you are interested, I would love to be with you. My intention is to begin this Sunday for the next week. And so first there's an introductory chapter. So I would read that introductory chapter this coming week. And then after that, start on week 1 the next week. So every Sunday, beginning the next chapter. And if that's just a few days from now, then no need to feel pressure. I'm a big fan of having the physical book this time around, since I'm not in the United States and I'm living with a large backpack. I chose not to bring the book, and so I'll be doing it digitally. But if you like using the physical book, which I'm a big fan of, having books to make notes in and write in the margins, especially books that I reread, where I put the date when I had these thoughts, so that in the future when I reread it, I can see where my mind was then and how it is now, and I can observe how I grow and change. So if you want to get the physical book, and it's going to take a little time to get it, no worries. I'll just be reading the introductory chapter next week, and so it'll be very easy to catch up. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you. I love you. Namaste.